Welcome to You the People. In this program, we will provide you with interviews and information from and about the people who affect your lives. Our program may include conversations with candidates, elected or appointed officials, town department heads, and more. We will delve into the kitchen table issues that make a difference in our towns and region. I'm your host, Julie Thompson. Let's get started. Welcome to You the People. Today we are fortunate to have the town clerk from the town of Hingham, Carol Falvey. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. Town clerk, it's a big job that a lot of people don't understand. But before we get into all the things that are town clerk,
Okay.
let's talk about you.
Sure.
So where are you from? How did you wind up as the town clerk?
So I grew up in Hingham, was part of a family that was very much involved in our community. My parents helped to build the previous version of Foster School back in the 1970s. So we had great examples with our mother and father. So anyway, I went to college, went to law school. Eventually, my husband and I settled back in Hingham, and I am a lawyer by profession. I was fortunate in that I had the opportunity to be at home with my kids, working part-time, and also being very involved in the community. So I was involved initially with the Hingham Education Foundation, fundraising for the school department, my first foray into public-private partnerships. So I can see what you can accomplish working together. After that, I then ran for the school committee in Hingham. I was there for 6 years. We built the new middle school. We started full-day kindergarten. We did the new multipurpose field at Hingham High School, another private-public partnership. We worked with Hingham Sports Partnership to raise funds for that. That was a huge project, but we also had a lot of different constituents in that project. We had abutters who weren't that keen on it. We had parents who were very supportive. So that was a process. You had to work through it. All through those years, of course, we have a budget that we have to get the advisory committee and the select board to approve. So all of those experiences helped me to learn who the players are, who you need to work with to accomplish something.
Right. How does this work?
So that was a great learning experience for me.
So you got a full view of what goes on by being on the school committee.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. So what made you decide to run for the town clerk?
So first of all, Eileen McCracken, who's been the town clerk forever, she retired. So there was a position open, and lots of people were interested in joining, deciding to run. January 6th of 2021 was really what prompted me to run. I said, this is an important position. You're in charge of elections. I was devastated by what I saw happening in Washington. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do this.
Okay.
And I was the fourth person to throw my hat in. And 3 or 4 months later, I ended up winning. So I'm very
So it was
fortunate.
January 6th that was kind of your...
It was.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about what a clerk actually does, what you're responsible for. Among the chief duties, you maintain vital records, you serve as the chief election officer, you issue licenses and permits, and you coordinate public records requests.
Correct.
So the thing that takes up most of your time is what?
Depends on the year. So
Okay.
2024, it was all elections.
Okay.
We had 4 elections. We had a presidential primary, we had the town election, we had the state primary, which was the Tuesday after Labor Day, and then we had the presidential election in November.
Right.
So we were keeping afloat, doing all the other things that are required of us, but elections were our chief focus for the year.
Now, when it comes to elections, a lot has changed over the past, let's say, decade. Mail-in, the pandemic obviously caused a lot of people to use mail-in voting instead of in-person voting. Now, people expect to be able to vote mail, or they can vote early, or they can vote on the day of.
Correct.
How has that affected?
Oh, it's so significant. I never thought it would catch on as much as it has.
The mail-in voting?
The early vote by mail is huge. I would say approximately 50% of every state election that we've had, people vote that way in Hingham. And it's when the people come in and they tell me, or on the phone, they say to me, I like being in the privacy of my home. If there's a valid question, I like being able to look it up on my computer, or my laptop, on my phone. And I just don't like the pressure. Some people were actually afraid to come out and vote in 2024. They were afraid of what the other side would say, and they just felt safe and secure doing it at home.
Okay.
So it's older people, people with any kind of physical limitations. It's just so much easier for them. That's what I hear.
Okay. Now, for you, it's a pretty longer process, though, right? Because
Absolutely.
people have to request
Right,
a
you have to-
ballot.
right.
And you have to send it to them.
You do. And it's the process is they have to request it. Every time we take a step, we have to log it into the state voter registration information system. So we have to say that we have sent we've received an application, we've sent out a ballot. Then when the ballot comes back, we have to log it
Yep, so
again.
you received the
And
ballot.
that's why they say, like, you can check on the progress of your ballot by checking into, I'm going to forget the website, but
Yep.
it's, I have it.
Okay.
So it's very time consuming. And then the ballots come in, so they have to be like checked and processed. And then when they go out, we have election workers that come and help us. So
Yep.
it's really shifted a lot of what we do to beforehand.
Right.
Instead of just an election
Yeah, so it's a
day.
lot more admin.
A
Way
lot
more admin.
A lot more.
Okay.
For sure. And we do get, for the early voting, I will say, because it was a state requirement,
Yep.
we do get some monies. We
Okay.
get postage for the mailing,
Okay.
which they then keep track through the VRIS. And then we do get some election help in terms of a reimbursement. They supply the ballots
Okay.
and the envelopes and all of that.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of state support
Okay.
for that.
Okay.
Typically, that kind of comes in as the year goes on. I remember last year, as we were closing out the fiscal year, because I had prepaid for one of our previous year, I was like crossing my fingers that I would get that money before June 30th, and I did.
And you
so
did.
we were all
That's
good.
good. That's good. So if somebody wants to run for an office that is open, first of all, you're the department that notates what offices are open and how many
Correct.
slots are open in
That
that
is
office.
correct.
Okay. Select
then-
board has 2 openings,
Right.
whatever. Okay. What do you do next? What's the
So
next
then,
process?
so somebody will call and they'll say, like, I'm interested in running, say, for school committee.
Yep.
So we have, we give them a nomination paper.
Okay.
So the nomination paper says what the name of the registered voter is who's running, and we do check to make sure
They
that
have to
they're
be.
running as they're registered to
Yep.
vote. It tells when the deadline is for returning the papers. It tells you how many, we typically, in Hingham, you're required to submit 50 good signatures. And when I say good, that means the people that signed it actually live in Hingham and they're a registered voter, and they didn't sign it more than once, which sometimes they do.
Do you have to verify all those
We do,
signatures?
and then when the papers come in with all the signatures, 32 signatures on each sheet,
Yeah.
we verify them
And what do you verify them against?
against our voter registration
So
system.
if you have
for
10
the state.
people, that's 500 signatures you have to verify.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Okay. So, okay.
Yeah. So-
Again, more admin.
A lot more, a lot more. And then the so that whole process, and then we let them know, and then they're on we put them on it. We have a draft ballot
Yep.
for the local election,
Yep.
but then I send it out for everybody to prove, which
Okay.
is a custom that Eileen did, and I was like, that was
That's
a great idea.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
and everybody gets to sign off on their name and address and tell me that it looks great.
That it looks,
Right.
the ballot looks appropriate and
Right.
correct. Okay. Now, that's for local elections.
Right.
Now, what happens for the Senate and the,
So those are prepared at the state level.
okay.
And, they also have nomination papers, but those are generated through the Secretary of State's
Okay.
office. And those, and a lot of times, in same with petition questions, they come to us, we verify the signatures of the people, but
Yep.
then they pick those actual nomination
Okay.
or petition papers, and they have to file them with the Secretary of
Okay.
State's office.
Got it. So generally when people think of, okay, I want to know who's running for the school committee in my town, they go to the clerk's office.
They will.
On the website.
On the website,
Yeah.
but I also, when I started, only because I was one of those people that always wanted to know, like, who's running for what,
Yeah.
I started a weekly update where I sent it out to people who are subscribers to Town Clerk News, and I send out an update every week about these are the people who've pulled papers.
Oh, that's great.
These are the people who've returned their papers. These are the open slots.
Yep. And you also post that on your website.
it's also
so you
on the
don't have to be a
website.
subscriber. You can go right to the
You
website.
could, right.
And
Absolutely.
if you go to Town Clerk, you'll
Right. If
list
you go to
in-
Town Clerk,
yeah,
it's right
you'll
there.
list-
It's a news flash, and it tells you weekly who's
Okay.
running.
So the day of elections, how many polling places do you have in Hingham?
So we have 3 locations,
Yep.
but we have different number of precincts at each one. The
Okay.
high school has 4 precincts.
Yep.
The middle school has 2.5, and I say a half because precinct 7 was split between Linden Ponds.
Okay.
And because they have their own voting location.
Oh, got it.
And we refer to them as 7A.
Okay.
So we have 2.5 precincts at the middle school.
Yep.
And then we have Linden Ponds,
Okay.
which is a very active and vibrant voting community.
Sure. Okay. And the hours are whatever the hours are.
The hours for state elections are 7 to 8. You're going to allow me to talk on something that I want to talk about. And the town election is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I actually have filed a warrant article for our town meeting this year because of the popularity of early voting and where so many people vote early to reduce our town election hours to 8 a.m., same time, to 6 p.m., which many other towns, Hanover, Norwell, Situate, all do this and have done it for a number of years.
And the reason for that is?
Because there's so few people that come in from 6 to 8.
Okay, and then you can get the results out faster.
We could get the results out faster. We also save some money. It's about like $2,800 that we would save in those 2 hours for police officers, election workers, school custodians.
Because there's certain things you have to have every time you have an election. Okay. Now, are you in charge of if people want to put signs around the town, or is that a different department?
No, that is somewhat our department and the building department together. So we tried to tell candidates ahead of time. Last town election, we actually had no races, so nobody put up any signs.
Okay.
But, it has to be on private property and not on town-owned property.
Okay.
And that strip of grass that is between the roadway and the sidewalk is owned by the town.
Okay.
So you can't put your signs there. And if they do, sometimes the building department or DPW will scoop them up.
Okay. And when is the next election happening in Hingham?
The next election is May 3rd.
Okay.
Which is the first Saturday in May.
Okay.
And that follows town meeting, which is the Monday before April, I believe it's 28th.
Yeah.
And Tuesday, if we have a second night, it would be that. And then it's always the town meeting is always the fourth Monday in April.
Yeah.
And the election is always the Saturday following that.
Is that common to have your town meeting before the elections?
It does. So this is the reason why. So say you have this year, we have an open seat for select board.
Yeah.
My understanding is that Joe Fisher's not running again.
Okay.
So if you had town meeting after the election,
Yeah.
you have a person who served as the select board for all of the process, voting on the articles.
Got it.
And
Who's
now
no
you have
longer going to be
no
in
longer
that
going to
position.
be there.
Got it. Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you had, if you could change anything about the whole election process, what would it be?
I think with the advent of early voting, and I know the legislature, I think, is looking at this, we need to now come into the 21st century and understand that we've put in some great opportunities for people to vote. So we need to rethink how we do this and not be stuck in our old ways of saying we need to open at 7 and be open till 8 p.m. And it's a long, long day.
Right.
For everybody involved.
And it doesn't end for the election workers at 8 p.m.
Absolutely. Nor does it end for the police because everybody's there until we finish up.
You're done. Yeah.
And then we get back to town hall. So it's a super long day, and it's just what we're seeing is the numbers at the end of the day. It just dwindling.
People have already voted.
So we use poll pads to check people in, and the data from that is amazing. And so when I made my presentation to both the select board and advisory committee, which they both supported unanimously, it shows sort of how this is how we vote, and then we go right at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's something on a state level I would love to see change.
And it probably will.
I'm hoping.
You're definitely not the only clerk who feels this way.
I'm sure not. Yeah.
And do you think there'll ever be online voting?
I don't know.
Have you ever talked about that?
I haven't.
Okay.
I think what I see is sort of the integrity of that. How do you absolutely safeguard that?
The absolute point. I wondered if that was anything in the ether that you've heard about. Okay, so you're the chief election officer. Let's talk about the other 3 things that you do.
Sure.
Vital records. You maintain vital records.
We
Birth,
do.
Death.
And marriage. Yes.
But not divorce.
Not divorce. You go to probate court for that. Not at all.
Okay. Okay.
Because we don't sanction the divorce. The divorce happens in the court.
So, got it.
Not in sort of the local area.
Right. So anyone who was born in the town of Hingham,
right?
You have their birth certificate.
I have if they were living at the time they were born, or they were actually born in that town. So if it was a home birth, because we have no hospitals.
Okay.
We would have the record. A lot of people that are living here with their kids
Yeah.
think that that we have the records to their, say, child that was born in Boston.
And you don't.
And we don't.
Right. It's where the child was actually born.
Born or and resigning at the time.
So it's what's on their birth certificate.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, the birth certificate can be issued or obtained at either of those places.
Now, do you have anything to do with the issuance of passports?
We do not.
Did you ever?
No.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge. That's a U.S. That has to do with the federal government, and the post office does that.
And death records, do funeral homes automatically send you the death certificate of someone who resides in your town?
So we actually issue the death certificate. So we are part of a vital records registry through the state, and it involves the funeral homes.
Yep.
It involves the clerk's offices, cities, and towns, and it involves hospitals.
Okay.
So records are, various parts of the record are uploaded.
Okay.
And then we actually issue the death certificate.
You issue the death certificate.
Again, death certificates where you died. So if you died at Social Hospital, Weymouth will have access to your death record. But if you lived in Hingham at the time of your death, even though you went to Social Hospital, Hingham would also have that record.
Okay. And the death records are very important for people that are collecting insurance.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a million reasons why.
Social Security, benefits, annuity, retirement benefits.
So births, deaths, and marriages. So anyone, is it married in your town?
So that you can apply to any city or town in Massachusetts. And we call that filing for marriage intentions.
Okay.
And then after this ceremony has taken place, you can take that intention that has been filed with any city or town, and whoever is signing it, whether it's a priest, a rabbi, a minister, a one-day solemnizer, a justice of the peace, it comes back to the city or town who issued that original license. Okay. Then after we complete it, they complete it, it becomes your marriage certificate.
Got it.
Yeah.
So do you have anything to do with people changing their names if they get married?
The one thing you can do when you get married is you can change your last name.
Okay.
Either party can change only their last name. A lot of women think they can change their middle name. Yeah. That's not technically accurate. Okay. You would have to go to probate court.
Okay, got it. Okay. You issue licenses and permits. For what? To whom?
Licenses and permits. So we issue, last year we issued 936 dog licenses.
Okay.
Dogs are an amazing part of our office. It's so many people in Hingham have dogs. Yeah. And I suspect there's even more that haven't been licensed. But dogs are huge. So so that's one of the licenses. We issue business certificates. Okay. So those are mainly for DBA, people doing business in another name. Okay. We have, like we talked about the marriage intentions, we also have burial permits that are involved with the death, and then we have raffle permits. Oh, right. So if you're holding a raffle, a lot of schools have raffles. Yep. There is a whole process. It was new to me when I started the job. Foundation. Right. Yeah. So when if you're a nonprofit and there are other organizations that are eligible. Yeah. So it's a process where you come to me. The police department has to sign off that this is a good character. That there've been no prior issues, and then we issue them a permit. Okay. So that's... Okay. Yeah. Now, the other thing you do is public records request. Yes, huge. Right. And I assume nowadays it's more huge than ever. What are some examples of public record requests that you get? So we receive a lot related to land. You'd be surprised. Like who owns land? Or no, I mean, that's... All of that. The registry of deeds is online, and our assessors have an online database. So you could look up any address in Hingham, and you would find the owner. You could find out who the owner. Okay. It's more like about the land. Did they ever have an underground storage tank? Are there any environmental concerns? Okay. Has the water been tested? Got it. Are there any zoning decisions, planning decisions that might affect sort of the marketability of the title of the land? Okay. Has the Board of Health ever come in and condemned the house? It's just... So there's a lot of real estate related requests, and we receive so many. They're all supposed to go through our office. Right. We had over 200 in 2024. But sometimes they'll send them directly. Okay. Is there a history of underground storage tanks? You know, then they worry about like leaking and whatnot. Is there anything historical ever referred? Like, is this part of a historic district? Does that ever come up? Not really. Okay. I mean, they would go. I mean, we would direct them right to our historic society for that. Okay. No, we have an office. Oh, okay. So where we would direct them. To. Yeah.
Now, do you also oversee town meeting?
So that's
some way?
not why I participate in town meeting.
Okay.
So the moderator in Hingham, it's the moderator's meeting.
Right.
So he is in charge of the meeting. The select board's office or the town administrator's office does help to organize town meeting. They plan in terms of like, who's the sound system going to be? Where are we going to chairs? All of that. But I am the official note taker.
Yep.
We do typically have somebody there that's there transcribing what's going on because the record is invaluable. People come in and they want to know what was the discussion on this article from the 1985 town meeting.
Right.
And having that like the verbatim is so.
Do you record that?
They do. We hire
Okay. And is that an official record or is it the written record?
No,
the official record?
No, it becomes part of the official record.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so I'm attending town meeting. I sit next to the moderator. I take notes. Kind of extra pair of eyes. But the other thing that after town meeting is that we then have to submit all of the bylaws that have been revised or new to the Attorney General's office, and my office. I do that. So it's
so you have to follow up on that.
Follow up. So that's like all of like the 3 weeks, another month of. And it's just significant because they want proof that you have advertised the meeting correctly, that you were served by the sheriff or by the constable, that all of the votes were taken properly. So it's quite a process.
Now, I remember back in the day where people would have to have all kinds of things posted in the local newspapers as far as a public hearing is being held.
Right.
There's not a lot of newspapers anymore. How is that done now?
They still do it. I mean, they will reach out to either the Journal or the Patriot Ledger to do that. And I know there's been a lot of conversation about like that may be the last thing keeping some of these publications alive.
Up and running. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's talk about the census.
Sure.
Now, is the clerk's office responsible for the town census?
Yes.
What is it? How often do you have to do it? And what are the ups and downs about it?
So it's an annual requirement called a street listing census required by Massachusetts law. I brought a copy with me. So this is a blank one from 2025.
Yeah, and I think people are used to seeing that.
I think so.
And we'll put this up as an attachment.
So so this goes out to approximately 11,000 households.
Yeah.
We receive back, I would say, probably 90% of them. I think we have a pretty good rate. The one thing we learned last year, which was so interesting, we had heard that in another town, they would send out, along with this form, they would send out a separate school census that the school department likes to kind of update their enrollment.
Yep.
So we offered to the school department, and so we tried it last year for the first time.
So they piggyback it with yours.
It was like two in one. And so the price was manageable because we were adding just one sheet.
Yeah.
What we learned when they came back is that a number of people did not have their children listed on the town census. So kind of backtracking, a census is supposed to be a list of everybody who lives in your residence on January 1st.
Okay.
So it includes your kids.
Yep.
It includes your mother who might have moved in, or your uncle who is living with you.
Yep.
Your married children, a couple that are living with you temporarily for a year or two, saving money. It includes everybody who lives there. So what we learned was we were getting the census back with the mom and dad listed.
Yep.
And then on the separate school one, it would have the kids. And we were like, oh my gosh, these kids should be on here.
Yeah.
So, but we also didn't feel like that was our role to just add them without checking with the parents because there may be a reason that they're not listed.
Yeah.
So then we had to reach out to all these parents to say, hey, we noticed that, Sally and
Did
John.
they just maybe not know that
and maybe
they weren't adults, so they didn't need to be on there?
And that could be part of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it's everybody.
Okay.
Old, young.
Yep.
Temporarily living with you for a year, that's fine.
Now, if you don't return this, is there any ramifications?
So the ramification is you can become an inactive voter or removed from the voter rolls.
Okay.
We can't do that without notifying. We can't remove anybody without notifying them first. But many times parents will say, oh, my son moved to New York.
Yeah.
So we don't take them off because we need the signature of, if he's a voter, we need the signature of the voter. But we will make them inactive.
Okay.
And then when they go to vote, this happens so much in November, people were marked inactive. Some of them were marked inactive because they had never returned this, and we did send out a notification. So then they have to complete an affidavit saying that they are currently still living in Hingham, and
they did that the day of, so that they could still vote.
They're there at the election day.
Okay.
So their rights to vote are pretty protected. Yep. But people tell me they don't want to return this. They're like, I don't want you to know.
Well.
So, but it's a state law.
Right.
But in any event, so there is a whole process. But certainly those people that they completed the affidavit saying that they still lived in Hingham, and they have to show that they have something with current address on it.
Yeah, right, like a utility bill or something. Okay, perfect. So in our last 3 minutes, what do you want to talk about?
Can't be 3 minutes.
And I know. Let's ask the magic wand question. If you had a magic wand, Carol, and you could make anything happen and money was no object, what would you do?
Oh, well, first of all, I would love a communications specialist, whether it was for me or for the town. I think the landscape of how we communicate with people has changed so dramatically in the last 10 years. And all of our municipal governments, people are so overworked. Right. So it's like, okay, Carol, so do all these things that we've talked about. And then, hey, can you put together a message to send out? I know when I was running for this job initially, I thought that would be like, oh, it's so easy. Like, let's focus on getting this done. But it's just another huge thing. And you want it to sound good. You don't want it just to be
inconsistent.
Right.
So a communications director would have consistent through all the departments.
Absolutely. And we all, I think we try to do the best we can. But that would be like if that would certainly be one thing. The other thing would be more money for staff. To do everything that we do. Yep. Sometimes you need the time to like do a deep dive and spend some time instead of just quickly running from this thing to that thing. Yep. So more money to hire more people. And I have to say, I have the best staff. Can I give them a plug? My assistant is Jennifer Donnelly. She's amazing. And I have we have another position that we have split between two people. Laura Donnelly, no relation, and Chris Hurley. But they're wonderful.
So you need more people to do a lot of your admin and your
just things the following up. Like we have dogs, so we have to go out and all the Bear Cove dogs and say like all those people that have licenses. We have to go back this summer and say, hey, you need to update your insurance liability, and you need to update your vaccination shots.
So there's a lot more to issuing a dog license than just issuing the dog license.
Because then you have to renew it, and then you have to make sure that the vet's given us a rabies certificate.
And all those things might take multiple emails, phone calls, and that takes time, and that takes payroll hours.
Exactly.
Okay.
So those would be definitely a couple of things.
Anything else?
Well, I told you about structuring voting hours. We've already talked about that. That would be another thing I would love to do. And one final thing on elections, if we have a moment. I would love to streamline that a little bit. And we did learn this year that there is some hardware. It's called tallying and reporting hardware. Think of it as like a high-speed tabulator. So tabulator where you put your ballots in. So there's a whole process where you could you can get your information from each of the precincts tabulators with a thumb drive. And we would take all those thumb drives and put it into this piece of hardware, and we'd have our results like that. So that would be that would be great.
And that obviously costs money.
It costs money. Costs money.
So that's something you can put in put the ear of the people.
It's going to be in my capital budget for the next fiscal year.
There you go. Okay, and you don't plan on going anywhere. You love being the clerk.
I do. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it.
That's great. Carol, thank you so much. This has been very enlightening. A lot of people don't realize how much work the clerk's department does.
I appreciate your having me here.
Well, thank you so
much.
It's
been a lot of fun.
This has been Julie with Carol, and it's You the People. And until next time, have a good day.